Now, if we take a moment to consider some distinctions between moral rights and legal rights, this may help us to appreciate these different dimensions of human rights. So for this definition, I've gone to the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and again, the reference will be listed in the notes for this clip. Moral rights are rights that, it is claimed, exist prior to and independently from their legal counterparts. The existence and validity of a moral right is not deemed to be dependent upon the actions of jurists and legislators. So we don't need the lawmakers to decide for us about moral rights. Now here the Encyclopedia of Philosophy is drawing upon an example of the apartheid regime in South Africa. And you will need to look that up if you are not familiar with the history of apartheid in South Africa. But in the shortest possible way to contextualize this, the majority black population in South Africa were deprived of full political and citizenship rights. So here's what the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy says to help us appreciate the difference between moral and legal rights. Many people argued, for example, that the black majority in apartheid South Africa possessed a moral right to full political participation in that country's political system, even though there existed no such legal right. Okay, that's the end of that quote. So I think that will provide a useful distinction, and it is a distinction that is between moral rights and political rights that many of us grasp at an intuitive level. Moral rights often find expression in particular legal codes. So legal codification of rights is where we often, but not always, find expression of moral rights. And this will vary, of course, from society to society. The example that Brian Arendt offers in this case is quoting from him. For instance, the moral right not to be lied to is at least partially codified in many Western democracies in the form of the law prohibiting perjury. So lying to a court, which is perjury, while under oath during a proceeding. In this next section, we are going to ask a few questions of a different nature. Namely, what are some characteristic features of human rights? Where can we find the roots of the ideas of human rights? And what are some opposing approaches on the origin of human rights? So in this next section, I am drawing from a number of sources other than the Brian Arendt book, just as a heads up. Firstly, then, characteristic features of rights. Human rights are universal, which means that everyone enjoys human rights, regardless of their ethnicity, race, gender, religion, etc. Secondly, human rights are inalienable. This means that they are innate and cannot be taken from someone. So to say that rights are inalienable means that no one can deny them or remove them. Now, when we look at the roots or some roots of ideas of rights, as well as some differing opinions about the origins of rights, we can see that on the one hand, the idea of universalism has a broad foundation. But on the other hand, the specific idea of rights is based on certain social